I'm going to ask a question on behalf of other people. What if I'm an introvert?
Yeah, well, I'm an extrovert, so
I think all three of us are.
Yeah.
we are. I actually, when I was younger, I was actually more introvert characteristics, but as I grew up, I became extrovert. I actually asked my dad a long time ago because I said, Dad, I want to be more I want to be like, where I can go meet people, where I'm charismatic. And I was younger. I was like 10 years old, and I said, because, being a pastor's kid, you constantly meeting new people like every day. So it's like you go shake their hand, and I'd get this horrible feeling in my chest, like I'd be so scared, terrified of just shaking someone's hand and saying, "Hey, what's up?" Or And I asked him, how did you become, how do I do it? How do I become an extrovert? He said, well, I used to be an introvert. And I said, you're lying. He said, yeah, I was an introvert. And I said, okay, well then how did you get over it? How did you get past that? And he said, that's the easiest question I've ever gotten. I said, what was it? He said, worship.
Yeah.
And I was like, I found that so interesting because we don't talk about worship as a part of getting out there. On that side of it, we always talk about worship. Okay, you're praising God, But he said no. When I started becoming more physical, when I started actually showing and displaying and presenting myself to God, being a sacrifice, he said. And as I started being more transparent even with God in my worship, I found myself being more transparent with people. I started finding myself being more outgoing to people because I was more outgoing with my worship and outgoing to God. So he said I really was putting myself out there to God, and as I was doing that, God was giving me the knowledge and training me on how to become an extrovert. So when people ask me all the time, I get this question a lot, like, what's your greatest advice, Landon? Like, what would you say is the best thing for me to do? I was like, well, I would always say, well, are you an extrovert? And they'll say, yes or no. If they say yes, I'll say, okay, learn to be an introvert. And it's the opposite way. If they say, I'm an introvert, I say, okay, you need to learn to be an extrovert. Yeah. So because you're going to reach people that are both. You're going to reach people who are extrovert, people who are introvert. And I've recently I was talking with somebody, and I began to study out the difference, introvert and extrovert. And I realized when two introverts get together in a conversation, one of them automatically becomes more extrovert. And it's the same exact thing with two extroverts getting together with a conversation. They're going to become, one of them's going to become more dominant, more extrovert. The other one's become more introvert.
Yeah, one of them's bound to be a bigger personality.
Right.
I don't know. I think all three of us are pretty loud, and
Yeah.
we
We're
all
all
talk
pretty
with each other.
obnoxious.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but it's the same
He's a
thing
good
with
man.
even an extrovert and an introvert having a conversation together. The extrovert will automatically become more, dominant unless he gives the introvert
A chance to talk.
a chance to talk, basically. So that's why I always say, okay, if you're an extrovert, be an introvert. If you're an introvert, learn to be an extrovert.
Yeah.
So that's my advice on that.
I'll just take my marriage for example. My wife is probably the quietest person I've ever met in my life. Of course, until she got around me more, because she came out of her shell a good bit. But even still, like, she's very quiet, very just kind of keeps to herself. And I'm loud. I'm boisterous. Just off the wall sometimes. Just kind of just always running circles around other people just because of how much energy I usually have. It doesn't seem like it because I'm trying to stay well behaved for the show, but spending quality time with my wife, like, sometimes just my personality is a little too much for her to handle. So sometimes I have to make sure I give her space, because otherwise she might want to kill me at the end of the day.
And that's not healthy for any marriage, okay?
We learn very quickly to. She tells me whenever I'm being too much, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'll chill out then.
Nice.
Some marriage counseling with Brother Tyler.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, an introvert comes up, asks you, like, okay, how do I do this? How do I be so? What would you say? Like, how would you give that advice?
Well, you can still be used by God.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter, honestly. You know?
I would first address what their definition of introvert is, because if they're just scared to talk to people, that's not what an introvert is. That's just the spirit of fear, and you need to reject that. You need to rebuke that in Jesus' name, and work on your relationships. But introvert just means you thrive more on one-on-one or smaller groups. Extrovert means like, you enjoy getting up and performing, or you like the attention. You like having people around you. You like having a crowd. Usually, like you just
You like having fun. You like just hanging out with the guys and stuff.
Yeah,
That's me.
like I could stay out all night, just doing like our Bible study sessions. Sometimes they get a little long, or just like hanging out with everybody from church. Like I could go until all the restaurants close, but that's not realistic, because people have to go to sleep and work.
Yeah.
We can't all be like you, Tyler.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I
don't sleep.
Stay up for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
He's practically living eternity right now, guys. But really, for me, when I actually started doing worship and stuff, and actually becoming more extrovertish, God would begin to mature me as a person, so that when I would have those one-on-one conversations that I was more comfortable with, I could give, more advice from God, rather than just my personal doctrine per se, right? And so when you're learning to be something, and mold yourself to something, like the beginning of Corinthians 9, it starts at 19, goes to 27, but that's what Paul is saying. He's saying, become all things to all people. So if you're reaching an introvert, be an introvert. Okay, if you're reaching an extrovert, learn to be an extrovert. Okay, you got to prepare for that in advance, and that also, and as you're doing that, God is going to mature your personality, your relationship with Him, and it's all gonna be a package deal, basically.